Hello random ladies and gents, and welcome to another Omega Debunks video. Today, we're wrapping up the tragic trilogy that is Creation Adventure Team. For those of you who don't know, Creation Adventure Team is a creationist type of TV show for kids that teaches them that evolution bad, creation good, in the most dishonest ways possible. If you haven't watched the first two parts, I highly recommend watching those to get yourself caught up to speed. They're up on my channel, so feel free to check them out. So, without further delay, let's dive right back into it. Come to think of it, where did I leave off?
Another book of the Bible is named Job, and there's these two other beasts in there that are named Behemoth and Leviathan.
Oh no!
I know!
And one's like this big huge thing with a big long neck and a big huge tail like a cedar tree.
Last time I checked, the Bible didn't say Behemoth had a long neck.
The Bible says Behemoth had bones like bars of iron.
Well then Behemoth really isn't a sauropod because sauropod bones are pneumatic, meaning it's riddled with holes filled with air pockets. Last time I checked, bars of iron don't have those.
And that he was chief in the ways of God. This means this creature was boss over all the animals that God created.
Yeah, but the Bible also mentions humans in the same position. Maybe that's why the Bible isn't meant to be taken literally, 'cause it's full of contradictions.
This creature was huge. Standing side by side, which do you think is chief in the ways of God? A 7-ton elephant or an enormous 20-ton dinosaur?
Which sounds more plausible? People writing about an animal that they can see in the modern day, or people writing about an animal they didn't even know existed at the time? Behemoth being referred to as a living dinosaur to suit this narrative is one of the biggest stretches of all time. Simply boiling down to the fact that there are so many different animals that were known at the time that could have been used as reference. Admittedly, they may not have been referred to as we know them now, like hippos, elephants, rhinos may not have been called the same thing because of different cultures in different countries, but ultimately, they could still have led to a similar outcome in Behemoth. The use of Behemoth as a living dinosaur for these creationist arguments is born purely out of naivety of ancient cultures and their views, as well as how they came to be and the fact that they aren't necessarily historical documents. They are myths, not history, and the fact that these myths were storytelling tools and allegories themselves. Using Behemoth as an argument for a real animal is fundamentally flawed itself because it's a mythical creature. Yes, it could be based on a real animal, but the likeliness that it's a living sauropod is highly unlikely.
Then there's Leviathan. He's got big huge scales that no swords can pierce through, and
his scales were so tight that not even a sword could hurt him.
I already covered this in my last video, but here's a huge contradiction in themselves that they do. They already suggested that Leviathan was a pliosaur or a plesiosaur, but now they're coming back and trying to say it was a suchomimus, or whatever this horrid thing is. And even then, these traits can be attributed to a crocodile or just your run-of-the-mill dragon of the time. It's almost as if they're trying to push a narrative, but are completely shit at it. So shit at it that they constantly contradict their own arguments to try to make themselves sound smarter. Fascinating.
then he breathes fire
Told you. Dragon.
on you, and he's in the water.
But what is very unique about this creature is that it could actually breathe fire and smoke.
We heard you the first time.
Fire-breathing dragons? Certainly you believe such creatures existed. It's simply a legend.
Well, how do you explain the fact that there are legends of dragons all around the world?
Because mythical creatures don't necessarily represent real animals. They can be based on real animals, but at the same time, many of these creatures stem from cultural aspects rather than biological observations. In fact, it's even been suggested that these myths are the same myth originating from a story or set of stories before recorded history, but as these cultures branched out and humans became more widespread, these stories changed according to their cultures. If you compare the myths of Apep, Jormungand, the Lernian Hydra, Leviathan, Orochi, all feature similar story elements of a great serpent that's slain by a deity, or they're so massive and voracious that they could eat the whole world. often leading them to some great heroic deity to slay them, or the serpents become entrapped in some sort of cycle like biting their own tail. I highly recommend researching this topic because it really is a fascinating cultural study that unfortunately I can't cover in more expansive detail without going off topic.
Perhaps the writer was simply being artistic.
I don't know about that.
Well, then you are lost! Would make a great news story, though, wouldn't it? Oh, yeah. I mean, this could be a newsbreaker.
Is it sad that the most accurate thing in this program is the news being full of shit?
Some people think Leviathan was an alligator or a crocodile. But what croc do you know that fits that description?
Other than breathing fire? A lot of them.
No, I think Leviathan was a dinosaur.
Holy bad editing, Batman!
Dinosaur that breathed fire, just like the Bible said.
Where in the Bible does it say that dinosaurs breathe fire? You still haven't proven Leviathan is a dinosaur yet.
There's a lot about dinosaurs and other animals that we don't know about, given their skeletons.
But we have so much more than just skeletons, like skin imprints and eggs, even mummies.
For instance, if you found the skeleton of a skunk, you'd never know that it had such a secret weapon.
Well, yes and no, based on where the glands are located, how they're structured, and if they were present on those remains.
And a secret power, such a powerful weapon.
Come that they give you a little kiss. Mwah, mwah, mwah. Oh, l'amour. Oh, so much for my little flower. Hey, got you good, didn't he? Woo!
The f***? You were just digging around in your backyard and you found the bones of this unknown creature. First of all, you might want to go change your pants.
Yeah.
You were just digging around in your backyard one day and you found the bones of this unknown creature that no one's ever seen before. You might want to move. You might go and sell it at a museum and make a lot of money.
Yeah.
But anyway.
Did they leave the bloopers in this thinking it'd be funny? 'Cause it's not.
You'd never know what color skin it had or if it could change colors. Kind of like a chameleon.
I'll cut this part some slack since the current method of looking at a dinosaur's pigmentation through an electron microscope wasn't figured out until much later than this show's release.
But we can sometimes tell what their skin texture looked like because we can find fossils of their skin, such as this dinosaur skin right here. This is from a hadrosaur dinosaur. Look at these beautiful scales. It can tell us a lot about this particular dinosaur and what it may have looked like.
Okay, so I can agree with all of that. The question still remains, according to the Bible, what actually killed the dinosaurs?
What kind of headassery is this? There is no according to the Bible because dinosaurs aren't in the Bible, let alone an outright explanation on why they're gone.
The earth became full of wickedness. There was one man, Noah, who was still faithful to God. God told Noah to build an ark of safety because God was going to send a global flood to destroy every air-breathing thing except those on the ark.
Then why are whales still here?
Scaly, I found something.
Incredible. A global flood was responsible for the death of the dinosaurs?
No.
Of course.
What did I just say?
Worldwide flood can account for all the massive fossil graveyards. Scaly, this is it.
That is the biggest load of pseudoscience shit I've ever heard. Do they really expect us to believe? Alright, let me take this from the top. No, global flooding did not cause these mass bone beds and fossil sites. Don't get me wrong, some of the fossils are fossils because they were washed together and that sediment ended up preserving them. That said, we know these animals come from different times based on strata levels. Basically, strata levels are different levels of rock and sediment that represent different points in geological time. The lower you go, the older it is. Animals that are usually found on the same layer are usually from the same time or within the same time range. This is usually the case for fossil sites, where we can see that these animals are found on the same layers of strata, and thus get a good idea of when these animals lived, if they lived at the same time, and what time frame this represents. You can also have two different animals from the same place, but from a different time, based on the level of strata that they were discovered. On top of that, we can also reaffirm these findings through other tests, like radiometric dating, which based on the amount of radioisotopes helps determine when these animals were from.
But Moeller, a flood of that magnitude would wipe out all life on the planet. How did anything survive?
This is actually accurate. If such water levels of global flooding truly happened on the scale that the Bible likes to depict, and creationists like to depict, due to different chemical applications in the water like salinity becoming screwed beyond belief.
Most people think of Noah's Ark as being this little tiny boat with all these animals crammed into it and still smiling at the same time because they're safe. Yay, they're safe. But that's just not the way it was described in Genesis. This ark was simply huge! Huge! The ark was this huge wooden box, kind of like a barge. This design had two major benefits. First, maximum storage space.
Yeah, all the maximum storage space for the millions of animals on the planet. Many of them carnivores with the necessary needs for, meat, and others weighing 50 to 70 tons. I'm sorry, where do those benefits come in?
And second, it had maximum stability, so when the waves are crashing it back and forth and back.
I honestly can't tell if they paid this guy too much or too little. I mean, he was willing to come out here on screen, make an ass of himself for the kids in the most painful fashion ever, but it's so painfully unfunny that it's sad. I'm conflicted. Leave in the comments if this guy got paid too much or too little for his services.
Noah's Ark could house his whole family. 2 of every kind of land animal. 2, and 7 of some. Do you realize how many that is?
Do you know how big the biggest sauropods could have gotten? And a lot of them were generally big to average size for dinosaur standards. I'm just saying, 2 Argentinosaurus on your boat can seem inconvenient.
Dinosaurs on the Ark? Now, how could they all fit?
Well, this is my point exactly. They couldn't all fit. I mean, there's too many. There's over 600 names of dinosaurs alone. Like,
God, your script is written by amateurs when they have to think of, there are so many names of different dinosaurs! The names are so important, because that's all we really care about, guys. That's what all paleontologists care about. How much we can name.
Why, you have the Diplodocus, you have the Brachiosaurus, you have the Tyrannosaurus.
And of course, you have the other generic suggestions that appear when you Google the term dinosaur. Truly, this man is an expert. Knowing the names of famous dinosaurs like every 4-year-old that's watched Jurassic Park.
It's not comprehensible. I mean...
Well, if we break the dinosaurs down into their different kinds, it would be more like 50 distinct kinds of dinosaurs that would be needed to be represented on the Ark. For example, here are all the sauropod kinds of dinosaurs. With just two, we can get all the others from their descendants. That's cool.
That's evolution through speciation! Are you for evolution or not?
Some dinosaurs were about the size of an ostrich, such as this Struthiomimus.
Eggs.
While most dinosaurs, on the average, they were about the size of a sheep. Like this Velociraptor right here.
I mean, I guess.
Still others, like the Compsognathus and the Heterodontosaurus, they were about the size of my pet rooster right here.
Of course you have a pet rooster.
Now, it's true that some dinosaurs grew to be huge monstrous creatures.
Titanically huge.
But it's safe to assume that when God was bringing the dinosaurs to Noah to put on board the ark, he would have brought younger animals.
Why? Why is it safe to assume that? Why is it fine for 12 tons of elephant to come onto the boat, plus the several hundred tons of other animals still on the boat, yet a few extra adult sauropods would just ruin the whole thing, when the structure of the ark itself was already doomed to fail?
Even a T-Rex or a Brachiosaurus were small when they were born.
This means that even the largest dinosaurs, such as the T-Rex, would have hatched out of eggs not much bigger than that.
Well, they're kind of right. The biggest dinosaur eggs were no bigger than grapefruits. The problem here is the fact that they depict this dinosaur egg as the size of a human toddler. In fact, based on the appearance of this egg, it looks like it belonged to more of a smaller theropod like an oviraptor. Right concept, wrong execution.
You know, they'd been easier to care for, wouldn't have taken up as much space, and they would have lived longer to reproduce after the flood was over.
Yeah, which would have led to a whole mutant line of inbred offspring. Just gonna point that out right now that the whole concept of two members of each species saving their population is tremendously flawed out of the sheer genetic reasons. After the 4th generation, offspring will be horribly inbred, which all depends on if the 1st generation mates. This is part of the reason why we're losing rhinos. They're hard to breed in captivity.
So what came first, the chicken or the egg? Well, the Bible says that God created birds on day 5, so the chicken came first.
Well, according to science, the egg came first because based on the genetic makeup of the parents, whose offspring inherited their mutations as well as displayed their own, which may or may not be passed on to its own offspring later in life if it mates. It ultimately comes down to the offspring passing on those genes and mutations.
In fact, all of the different kinds of animals in the world, dinosaurs included, would have only taken up about half of the Ark's total space.
That's not true! That's impossible!
Of course he would have distributed the weight evenly.
Yes, because we can't afford to sound more ridiculous than we already do.
It says here that all the animals got on and off the Ark. Dinosaurs are land animals, so that means that they lived through the flood. And we're back to square one.
You never had a square one. You were always at the starting plate.
Noah, his family, and all the animals were on the ark for over a year until God said, "It's time to leave." You know, the flood changed just about everything. It was an unrecognizable world. Climate was different, land masses shifted, canyons were formed, and it was a much harsher environment.
Okay, Boomer.
Dinosaurs survived the flood, and it's entirely possible that they lived up until recent times. And that most of them became extinct after the flood. Like most other animals have.
Wait, what?
Like most other animals have.
I'm going to assume he said like most other animals, but I couldn't tell over the sound of unintelligible mumbling. Could you mumble louder, please?
Dinosaurs. Dragon legends. It's all years. Hundreds of stories from all over the world about these dragons.
Yeah, and they aren't true.
Wait. Dinosaurs. There's been hundreds of them. And if these accounts are recent, then who's to say dinosaurs aren't alive today?
They are alive today. They're everywhere. In fact, if you step outside, you might actually see one.
Is that possible?
Well,
Avian dinosaurs, yes. Non-avian dinosaurs, no.
I suppose it would be what we consider possible. I mean,
That's not true! That's improbable!
he has discovered things that we thought were extinct.
Worst paleontologist ever.
The Ark had only one door, Those who went inside were saved. Those outside died. The door was open to everyone who had come in, but sadly, most people didn't want to. Let me make a comparison for you.
Obligatory Jesus message! Join our faith! Church on Sundays, children! Woo! Yeah! God's plan, am I right?
We can be saved by believing and receiving Christ as our Savior. All you have to do is ask.
Hallelujah! Holy shit! Where's the Tylenol?
Hey, look, Moeller. It seems that the evidence has been here all along. But the truth has been disguised as a fairy tale.
Children's fairy tales? This isn't a fairy tale. It's the Bible.
It seems that the dinosaurs have been used to convince people that the Earth is millions of years old to possibly steer people away from believing in the Bible.
Wrong.
So, most of the fossil record does not represent the history of life on Earth, but rather the order of burial during Noah's flood.
What you just said is one of the most insanely idiotic things I have ever heard. At no point in your rambling, incoherent response were you even close to anything that could be considered a rational thought. Everyone in this room is now dumber for having listened to it. I award you no points, and may God have mercy on your soul.
Dr. Tall, do you realize how huge this is? We are talking network here. This is good stuff. This changes everything. This is... wait a minute. You did this, didn't you?
No.
Of course you did.
Slight dog.
Yes, you did, Dr. Tall. Your friends, the glasses. When we are through with you, everyone in the free world, they're gonna know your name.
No,
this
my
is good
name
stuff.
shouldn't be
pack everything
anywhere.
up. We got stuff to do. Last thing we need to do is we need to get an interview with your friends.
I would rather they not be involved.
And come on, we gotta go. Oh, thanks, Dr. Tall.
Once again, the only thing being depicted accurately in this train wreck is the depiction of this news reporter.
Well, I suppose I won't be needing this.
The fact that you somehow managed to screw this up this badly proves you didn't deserve it. Also, gotta love how Creation Adventure Team treats paleontology like it's just some run-of-the-mill name tag job and not a career that's built off of years of studying, hard work, and schooling. Then again, Buddy Davis wouldn't know anything about this because he's not a paleontologist. He didn't go to school at all, in fact.
Hey, Noah. How you doing, old friend? Let's see. Oh, I can't wait to show you the dinosaur bones that we brought back with us from Alaska.
You mean the supposedly unfossilized dinosaur bones that you won't let any actual paleontologist look at because you know you're gonna get discredited and ultimately invalidated because you're full of shit? I mean, praise Jesus!
Ah, cheer up, old friend. Stand up here. Come on. Let's talk about the T-Rex. Come with me. Come on.
Yes, that's all I want to talk about all day. But, Buddy, will you at least admit when it comes to the ape, we do have the evidence on our side?
You're not going to like what I have to say about this.
Of course he isn't. Because you're probably wrong. And now, something completely cringe.
But for now...
Problem solved, God is good. He fixed the problem just like I knew he would. Problem solved, I knew God could solve that problem. God is so good.
Well, that was Creation Adventure Team. That was horrid. I may or may not do the next episode, depending on how well received this was and how highly requested it is. That said, I hope you all enjoyed this video and this little corner of hell. If you enjoyed this video, once again, feel free to check out the other two parts on my channel. With that said, have a random day.